Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. David Schwartz, who of course is Ripple's CTO and co-creator of XRP and the XRP Ledger, has made a prediction pertaining to the long-term viability of Bitcoin and proof-of-work chains. And of course, this is blasphemy if you're in the toxic Bitcoin maxi cult, because the people in that segment of crypto are in such an extreme echo chamber that it seems to be impossible for ideas outside of their collective to penetrate their tiny little skulls. So I'm going to share with you what David Schwartz had to say, which I think is perfectly reasonable. But again, to the toxic Bitcoin maxi hurl types, it's it's intolerable. I mean, these are some of the most intolerant people of all crypto, the Bitcoin maxi types. I can't stand it. The tribalism, it's complete and utter nonsense. And in the meantime, all of these problems, many of the problems facing Bitcoin anyway, don't apply to XRP or the XRP Ledger. The XRP Ledger is set to continue to thrive. Adoption is continuing, and it just works. That's why, from a technical perspective, XRP is one of the most boring cryptocurrencies out there, and I say that in a good way, because it just works. There's not the drama to make it exciting like you see with Bitcoin and all of the forks and this and that. And I also want to share with you this story on a completely separate topic. This one's from CoinDesk, titled Bankman-Fried's Incredible Shrinking $250 Million Bond. And the story is very interesting. As you may be well aware to this point, Sam Bankman-Fried has been granted bail, so out and about, and there are some requirements that come along with this, but he was able to be out on bail without actually paying a dime. And even the collateral that was put up for this $250 million bail was a tiny fraction of the $250 million amount. And some people think he's just getting special treatment here, and perhaps that is the case. I'm just going to share with you the facts as they've been reported in this instance. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anyone. You shouldn't do that either. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say, all right? I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. So just to kind of point out how ridiculous the Bitcoin maxi types are, I want to share with you this tweet that's on your screen from the Bitcoin Archive Twitter account, which has 1.1 million followers. Oh, yes. They have a massive number of followers. It's which, a very successful cult. Good for them. And they wrote the following. Just in, Texas Bitcoin miners have voluntarily stopped operations to return power to the grid during extreme cold weather. And then he's got the little hands raised high emoji. And then this guy wrote, Bitcoin mining secures the grid with the hands raised high emoji again. And I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, so, you do a thing that has a negative impact, making the situation worse in this case on a power grid, then you stop doing the bad thing, and then you're praised as a hero because you stopped doing the bad thing. Not just it's good that you stopped doing the bad thing, you're a hero, securing the grid. That's what they're actually doing here. So I retweeted that and I wrote the following because I wanted to illustrate the absurdity of this. And I wrote, Bitcoin echo chambers result in this kind of mind warp, with a little laughy emoji for me because I was lulling, bruh. I wasn't ruffling though, rolling on the floor laughing. I wasn't rolling around on the floor. I was just lulling. And so again, Bitcoin echo chambers result in this kind of mind warp. Let's apply this logic elsewhere and see how it holds up. Just in, Texas serial killer voluntarily stopped murdering people to return safety to society during scary time. Hand raised high emoji. Texas serial killer makes society safer. Hands raised high emoji, because we're all feeling good about this. The Texas serial killer in this hypothetical is the hero, just like Bitcoin miners, the hero, stopping doing the thing during the cold weather. Oh yeah, see this, try applying this logic anywhere else, and you can see how quickly it breaks down, which is, I just thought I'd highlight the absurdity of this. Can you imagine being part of that tribe and just being like, yeah, that makes sense. Oh my God, see, Bitcoin's awesome. Protecting that grid. Oh, okay. Protecting that grid. That's what I think they sound like. Just in my head. I don't know. And then there's this from you today. Ripple CTO makes prediction on Bitcoin-like proof-of-work chains. Details. And I'm just going to go to the thread. But first I want to highlight that this started because of a comment from Craig Wright. You may recall that Craig Wright has claimed that he is the creator of Bitcoin. Yes, he is Satoshi Nakamoto himself. Now, for a while, he actually did trick some people, including some people at the SEC, including, some very respectable individuals within the world of crypto. But his arguments broke down and got torn to shreds, and this guy has no credibility. So he's not Satoshi. He's still claiming he is, despite being proved to be a fraud in that regard. But he's got a massive following. I mean, it's got, I guess maybe it wasn't that massive. I thought it was more than that. 15,500 followers on Twitter. That's still not nothing. But I was under the impression he had more than that, so I guess I was just mistaken there. But anyway, so Dr. Wright here, Craig S. Wright, Satoshi Nakamoto himself, very well known in crypto. He wrote, Bitcoin cannot ever be adopted by institutional investors until the system is able to be recovered under a legal court order. Okay, and so upon reading that, I had the same reaction, a pretty similar reaction to David Schwartz. I'm sitting there thinking, court order where and what? I mean, there's all sorts of different jurisdictions the world over that have a different approach to crypto and Bitcoin specifically and this and that. I mean, it really is just code, and it is being adopted to whatever degree, and there are institutional players that have adopted it, but he said what he said. So David Schwartz retweeted that and wrote, this is so dumb for so many reasons. Why are institutional investors the target market for peer-to-peer digital cash? And which jurisdictions should have their court orders respected? Yeah, and so I think that's perfectly fair. I don't have a problem with institutional investors purchasing that, and I don't know that David Schwartz does. In terms of, them being the target market, well, that's not the target market, by creating, in terms of what Satoshi Nakamoto was envisioning. So in that sense, it's true. But once cryptocurrencies are created and they're decentralized, anybody can use them for whatever purpose. So in fact, the original intent of the creator doesn't matter that much in the end. Once they're decentralized, people adopt them for whatever use case, And so again, it's not me disagreeing with David Schwartz, just kind of expanding upon the thoughts that he posited there and the questions he posited there. And then a community member named JT responded to him, wrote, do you think the network will continue to operate if the cost of mining is higher than the profit? And David Schwartz responded, yes. That will reduce the number of miners, which will decrease the mining difficulty and thus raise the profitability of mining. It should self-regulate. And so I'll note that, of course, that certainly is true. There have been a number of times over the years where Bitcoin mining, once profitable, becomes not profitable. Certain participants cease operations as a result, or, you'd say pause. Some of them just pause. Some outright leave, sure. But the difficulty adjusts as a result of the participation, making it profitable again for others. And so it does self-regulate in that sense. So, cost of mining going up. No, that's not something that's going to be some sort of a permanent destroyer of all of this. And then another community member asked, do you see Bitcoin mining still existing past 2030 as governments push towards a sustainable green future? And David Schwartz said, I don't think proof of work will go away. I think its popularity will drop, but there may be room for at least one proof of work chain for a long time. I hope Bitcoin isn't the token filling that particular niche, though. And so I didn't see anywhere, at least at this point, that he's expanded upon the idea of why he doesn't want it to be Bitcoin. It may purely be power consumption. I don't know. I will say on the power consumption front, I've always thought that it's silly to continue to push forward utilizing cryptocurrencies that are energy intensive. Now, that being said, since I'm not a maximalist of any other coin, not XRP or anything else, I will be intellectually honest here and tell you that I really don't think that Bitcoin is currently, I mean, maybe some people argue it would in the future, but it's certainly to this point in time, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of global energy consumption. And sure, you can state that fine, it's only 3 or 4% of humans that have ever bought Bitcoin at any point in time, and so there's that. But but still, I'm just noting, at least at this particular junction in time, it doesn't matter. Now, I don't think that's a good excuse to use. To flock towards inefficient technology when there are way, way, way better solutions existing now. But I'm just noting, if Bitcoin's going to continue to stick around purely because it's the first, I don't really care. This isn't if Bitcoin is if the arguments that Bitcoin's destroying the environment, my God, you could get rid of it altogether and it's not going to make a dent in this. That's because you're focusing on such a tiny facet of what's going on. You're not actually getting at the core issue. And I don't want to get into that topic. It's not the purpose of a channel like mine in terms of the climate energy stuff like that. That's not what I'm getting into. I don't want to get political about it, nothing of the sort. I'm just noting, because I'm being intellectually honest, Bitcoin isn't the problem. And I don't think that it's ever going to be used on layer one for day-to-day, purchases and stuff like that. So the degree to which there would be increasing transactions, yes, if Bitcoin keeps adopted, to go up. But for stuff like that, maybe on layer twos where Bitcoin doesn't actually have to move and it's just backed by actual Bitcoin, well, just like spend the bits does effectively. Well, then you've already solved the problem. So I'm not that concerned. If Bitcoin continues to exist, okay, fine. If people are really serious about, if people really do, and again, I'm not making a comment saying I do or don't believe this, but the narrative is carbon dioxide bad for the environment. That's a big part of the argument anyway. So if you want that part of the argument to go away, a solution would be to use energy that doesn't emit that, like nuclear energy, which is actually very safe. France gets a ton of its energy, for example, from nuclear energy. There are nations that are pulling this off, and there are nations that are increasing it. It's just there's stigma around it, and I'm not convinced that many people that are making these arguments actually want to solve the problem. So that's a bit of a side tangent, though. But I'm just stating, like, if that's the concern, there already are real solutions. They're just not being implemented. So, which is also another thing that makes me think, to what degree is this even seriously being debated by people that, posit the idea that they actually care? So all that to say, and it's kind of a long response of, if Bitcoin energy consumption is the concern, just for me, I'm just like, because it just seems so disingenuous to not solve the problem, given that there's a solution out there. And even outside of that, the current energy consumption is it's a drop in the bucket. It just doesn't matter. And so, yes, I'd still pick XRP. It makes sense. And for a number of reasons, not just that. It's also faster and transactions are about free, but it is what it is. And then you got this from CoinDesk. Bankman-Fried's incredible shrinking $250 million bond. Sam Bankman-Fried walked out of federal court on Thursday, essentially a free man. News outlets all around the globe reported that Bankman-Fried got out of jail by posting a gargantuan, unprecedented $250 million bond. In court, Assistant U.S. Attorney Nicholas Roos described it as the largest ever pre-trial bond. But as it turns out, there is less than meets the eye in this $250 million bond. In fact, a lot less. In the typical federal case, a bail bondsman would charge between 10 to 15% of the amount in cash to issue a surety bond or bail bond. In the case of Bankman-Fried's astronomical bond, 15% of $250 million would be $37.5 million. But Bankman-Fried did not pay $37.5 million for his bond. No, Bankman-Fried actually paid no cash at all for his $250 million bond. Nothing. Zero. So I'll pause a note here that it's actually normal for the person that's in trouble, in this case Bankman-Fried, not to be able to pay their own bond. It has to come from somebody else, because especially if you've accrued funds through illegal means, then you're going to be happy to, put that up to get out. So that part actually is not the weird part. But anyway, moving forward. There is a second way to acquire a bail bond. A defendant or someone on their behalf may pledge collateral in the full amount of the bond. Then, if the defendant fails to appear in court, the pledged collateral is forfeit to the court. So, in Bankman-Fried's case, that would mean he would need a benefactor to step up and pledge property worth $250 million to get the bond, but that did not happen either. Instead, Bankman-Fried's parents promised to pledge as collateral their Palo Alto, California home, where he'll also be staying under house arrest. The Palo Alto home is rumored to be worth $4 million, and that is the next full extent of the collateral pledged to guarantee the $250 million bond. No other collateral was posted or promised. So where did that $250 million figure come from? Well, great question. In this case, Bankman-Fried was not required to post a conventional bail bond. Instead, Bankman-Fried was simply released from custody on something called a personal recognizance bond. The personal recognizance bond contains Bankman-Fried's solemn promise and his parents' promise to pay the court $250 million if he fails to show up for trial at the appointed time. Yes, you read that right. Bankman-Fried walked out of the court essentially a free man by signing a piece of paper where he promised to pay the court $250 million if he decides to flee to another country with no extradition. This, of course, is totally absurd. The attempt by the prosecutor's office to sell this as some extraordinarily onerous bail condition would be laughable. Except the millions of customers who Bankman-Fried defrauded aren't laughing. Who could have imagined that the Bahamas would have stricter bail laws for financial fraud than the United States? So look, it is interesting with a crime of this magnitude to put up literally $0, and then there's just a house worth a fraction of the $250 million figure that's below the normal threshold for something like this to a great degree. Because again, they cited what if it were 15%, 37.5 million. The house allegedly worth 4 million, so not even close. I'm just noting it's a bit peculiar. I don't know what the rationale is for this. I don't know if there's other key information that would make this look less bad that we just don't know, that hasn't come to light. Maybe. But on the surface, based on what we do know right now, I can state this looks not desirable. I'll just word it like that. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.